Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review for Marvel Television's Daredevil, Born Again. I was raised to believe in grace, but I was also raised to believe in retribution. Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast. My name is Nate, and this is our spoiler-free review for Marvel Television's Daredevil, Born Again. Huge thanks, as always, to our wonderful friends at Marvel Studios Canada and Disney Studios Canada for letting us watch this season early for review. If you're joining us for the first time, we are Geekcentric, a podcast celebrating the world of movies, TV shows, games, and all things Geekcentric. Joining me for this review, we've got my fellow vigilantes. He's a jovial drinker at your local Josie's, and he puts the law in J-Law and associates. He's Justin, the lethal litigating, law-abiding Lawrence.
You know, you use that jovial word quite a bit, right? You use that. That's like
J-word.
That's the word. That's the word that you come to all the time. It's. I guess it makes sense.
But if you were having a drink at Josie's, you'd probably be a little jovial, wouldn't you?
No, it's fair to say I would be probably very jovial. It's
What's your drink of choice after a long episode with me? What's your drink of choice?
After a long episode with you, wow. I don't know. It's a mix between either just straight up water or gin.
We'll never
Depending
know.
on what that episode is.
We'll never know. We'll never know. But joining right alongside him, he's also wearing a mask, but nothing can cover his incredible mane of hair. He's the defendant, Darcy, the dubious devil of Hell's Hudson.
Okay, yeah, I'll take it, I guess. I mean, if I wasn't covering my hair, I feel like that'd be a pretty identifying factor for me. Just not a lot of people walking around with
Can you imagine
highlighted long curly hair.
Right, and
He's
can you
got half
imagine
his
like
face
that mane pushing out like over like it would just be like just like pushing out the side like Sideshow Bob.
Have you
or
done a
something?
ponytail? You could do a ponytail, maybe. That would look pretty sick.
Yeah, again, my hair
fun.
that doesn't change the color, so I'd probably want to go full mask if I'm trying to hide my identity. Is all I'm saying.
Sure.
I should have gone with doobie. Yes, you know what I mean?
Really hit that. Yeah.
Okay, you know what? Do it again. Do it again.
here we
Yeah,
go.
that's better. No, yeah.
Guys, we are back in Hell's Kitchen. It feels good to be back. How are we feeling being back with Daredevil and this crew?
I mean, you guys mentioned it in your kind of little sizzler reel about it, but the fact that this feels like we're returning to that Netflix series, like no time has passed at all. It's incredible to be right back in that gritty, seedy world of the underside of New York. So really cool to be back.
You know, for a show that was so beloved by fans, and that really did kind of prove the formula that you can do superhero television properly in especially for Marvel. I think Daredevil is kind of the best example of that. It didn't live in the syndicated television space of like the Runaways or you know, other like the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It lived on Netflix, which meant it was allowed to kind of embrace a more authentic, a more violent, a more accurate depiction of what the character was envisioned in the comics. And I think Netflix really nailed that formula and nailed that story, especially with that first season, showing both an origin story and as well as like sort of a coming of hero story journey for both Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk as the Kingpin. So I think that in a lot of ways, the reason why that series has been revered as such a huge success is because of how it treated its sort of focus on the character.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I think, you know, back then we looked at it and it was still sort of long form television, and we moved into the streaming side of things and sort of got more of these sort of, you know, some series that do feel like TV series, but some of them do feel like elongated, you know, 8-hour movies that have been chopped up sometimes inappropriately. But I think, you know, it's funny. I told you this, Justin, when we first got the screeners for episodes 1 and 2, and I was like, I don't think I've seen season 3. So I went back and I actually watched season 3 for the first time. I binged it before continuing to watch the rest of this series because I was feeling a little disconnected with what was going on in episode 1. And so, I was happy to get that perspective for this show. And I'm happy to have Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk and just all these characters back in this side of New York. And with New York being so important in the MCU, and I'm stoked to talk about it. But before we get to our thoughts on the entire season, which again, we were lucky enough to have seen all 9 episodes. Thanks again to our friends at Disney and Marvel. We will be staying full spoiler free. So don't worry. The first 2 episodes are out now, but we're going to treat this as though you could listen to it either before or after watching the first 2 episodes. So with that said, let me get to the synopsis for this show. In Marvel's Daredevil Born Again, Matt Murdock, a blind lawyer with heightened abilities, is fighting through justice through his bustling law firm, while former mob boss Wilson Fisk pursues his own political endeavors in New York. When their past identities begin to emerge, both men find themselves on an inevitable collision course. The series stars Charlie Cox, Vincent D'Onofrio, Margarita Lavieva, Deborah Ann Woll, Eldon Henson, Sabrina Guevara, Nikki James, Jania Walton, Artie Frusciante, Clark Johnson, Michael Gandolfini, with Ayelet Zurer and John Bernthal. Dario Scartapane is the showrunner, and episodes are directed by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, Michael Cuesta, Jeffrey Nachmanoff, and David Boyd. And executive producers are Kevin Feige, Luis D'Esposito, Brad Winderbaum, Sama Amanat, Chris Gary, Dario Scartapane, Chris Ord, Matt Gorman, Justin Benson, and Aaron Moorhead. Daredevil Born Again is streaming exclusively on Disney+. Again, the first 2 episodes are out right now. So I think the best place to start with our discussion, guys, is, I think when this show was first announced, I don't know if everyone was totally aware or understood what Disney was planning to do with Daredevil. I mean, again, it is Disney, and this was a pre-Deadpool and Wolverine world that we were living in. So we weren't sure if they were going to go the distance with the tone of this show, matching the Netflix series. Because, like you said, Justin, that show, they weren't afraid to go there, and I think this show definitely goes there and even beyond that original Netflix series in terms of the violence, in terms of the darkness. So let's talk about it. What did you guys think of the look and feel of the MCU's Daredevil?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think it stays brutal. It stays bloody, just like the original. The choreographed fights are raw and intense. You feel every punch, you feel every blow, and every moment of exertion from these characters just feels so raw and intense. It's visceral. It's grounded. I don't think it in any way shies away from the physical toll that these fights take on the individuals in that moment, which is just it just adds to it, right? It really does heighten how much effort went into the choreography and bringing that to this series to make it that much more unique.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it's really cool is that the fact that what that Netflix series did so well and what this season is continuing to do is the fact that these are normal people. They don't have superpowers. These are just guys who know how to fight really well. And like you said, Justin, each of these punches pays a toll that we'll see in later fights or in later episodes and scenes, how they're still hurt and not recovering from that. So they didn't get the MCU treatment where every man can take a beating way more than he should. They really stay true to the fact that every punch counts, and these fights are so well done. And again, they continue on that tone from that Netflix series so well.
And I think a big part of that every punch counting really does come down to the sound design. I think there are so many phenomenal moments where, I mean, the music is fantastic as well. I think the Newton brothers are doing a fantastic job. But I love getting to hear the sort of the peak in their music, and at least 2 or maybe even 3 times. It's awesome because there's moments where their music just cuts right out and you just hear the punch and the bones breaking and the absolute visceral, sometimes horrifying moments. And it really draws you in. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And that with the cinematography,
yeah,
the sort of docu-style production where it feels just gritty. There's such a realism to the way that this is shot that feels very different from everything else we've seen in the television space with the MCU thus far. And I think this is where we kind of get maybe some more of that, and I use air quotes around it, that HBO vibe to this show that feels a little more, again, street level, grounded. It feels very in the moment. But on the flip side of that, you mentioned it, Darcy, bringing up sort of like the MCU treatment, and there is a bit of MCU treatment in this with some visual effects, which I don't know about you guys. This is something that didn't always work for me in specific moments. I think it pulled me out. It made me wish that they kept things more like the Netflix, where they didn't have the budget and it was more about sort of the Batman effect with Daredevil showing up and like maybe hearing the swings and so on and so forth. But seeing him at times and landing, it just looked really rubbery, and it felt like there was this tendency or this need to like MCUify Daredevil, and we have the opportunity to do this. We need to show a lapse of time, like the character has evolved and his skill set, so on and so forth. But I don't know. I just felt like it's not often, and it's not like it's like a huge thing, but I just felt like at times it just felt like we didn't need that. We don't need to see that. I feel like there could have been a better way to have done that, because they didn't have the opportunity to do that sort of stuff. I feel like they went for a different approach. Do you know what I mean? For in that series, that because they didn't have the budget for it.
Yeah, it was more about what you don't see and what your mind makes up to fill in those gaps. Whereas this show definitely tries to do those comic book covers where Daredevil's leaping off the corner of a building with his baton spiraling around him and stuff. And it's, I will admit, in this series, it does kind of take it out a bit, but the series goes right back to that real gritty, grounded tone that I'm not upset for too long.
It's not over. Yeah. It's not overdone, and I think that's what's good about it. It's just, though, you'll notice it. You'll notice
there's a very specific moment, actually, I think even in just the first episode that you may have already seen, that should have hit so much more. And you're right, Justin, you're kind of taken out of it because of how it looks. Now, I haven't watched the version that's on Disney Plus right now, so I'm maybe we'll watch that, and maybe we'll be eating our words. Maybe it does look a bit better.
Visual effects. We always talk about that too. Visual effects can be something like a bit of a work in project, but I feel like these first two episodes, we got them. I watched them again. They were done, and I feel like it's more or less just it's just something that you need to get used to, especially coming off of, as we talked about, something that felt so real and grounded with the original Netflix series. It just felt sort of out of place to see that. Maybe if we worked towards it and we saw it maybe in later episodes, but to your point, it's like in the first episode, and it was just a point where I was just like, oh, this kind of looks a little too CGI for me.
It kind of reminds you that we're watching a TV show and less a film or a movie, right? We talk about the differences, and oftentimes that does just have to come down to budget. But you're right, that idea of them sort of being in this almost middle ground, right? Because they are Marvel Television. They can afford a lot, but maybe not as much as they would for one of their films. And I think the creative use of lighting, though, is where they win me back. And I loved seeing the color in the light. There's this really stark, bright diner scene that you might have seen in the trailers with Wilson Fisk and Matt, and they're sitting at a table, and it just gives you the sense of sort of safety, but also it's so bright that it's uncomfortable, just like the conversation that they're having. And then I also love the probably my favorite thing is the use of red and blue in this show. I love seeing when they choose to turn red lights on, if it's like a blood splatter up against a wall and then a red light is turned on somehow, kind of thing, is really cool. But also just the idea of red and blue, and as Wilson Fisk gains more power, there is some sort of meta commentary over those colors in particular and sort of what they stand for. And I just think it's really interesting, the use of those in terms of things like the New York Police Department and then red for Matt Murdock, but also for violence.
Another creative choice, and we wanted to mention it in our interview, was the use of aspect ratio changing. Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, they talked about it in another interview where, the aspect ratio changes to help pull you into Matt's powers in a way, and we call it powers. Like you're absolutely right, Darcy. They're not powers; they're just heightened abilities, just like a Hawkeye or a Black Widow, right? Like they don't have powers; they're just heightened. So there's this really cool visual effect or camera effect that they go for, and they shoot it with 3 different cameras all at once that stitch it together in post. And I think that's really cool that they're able to actually create that effect and make you feel like you're kind of wrapped in this immersive experience. So those techniques stand out. Like those are new things. And the other new part that I really, really liked, and I just want to call out, is the way the filmmakers go for a grounded look for this series with New York, like really capitalizing on New York City's setting. I think the moments that focus on the streets of New York really stand out as, capturing the energy and grit of the city, and also just treats New York as more than just a little, like just a backdrop. It's alive, it's breathing. It's also super integral to the story, as both, Matt Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk have different opinions about how New York should be. And I think that these sort of interstitial moments where you get to see New York as it is, from its like dimly lit alleyways to the bustling streets, to these moments of like people just holding hands and the back of people's heads. And it's, it's captured in this, street documentary style that's also, kind of echoed through these little news interstitial reports that show us
BB reports,
the BB reports that are like on street testimonials about what's going on in New York. I think that was so, like, at first I didn't know how much I really enjoyed that, but as like you start to go further down in this series and you start to see how integral New York really is to the overall story, it really makes sense. So I think it was such a great way to kind of highlight New York as a character in this show.
Yeah, and I think it's uses of editing as well that are really interesting. And I think, if we're on the topic of, like you mentioned, visual effects, some of them didn't work. A very minor gripe for me is there is a bit of an inconsistency in the quality of the editing, and that's to be expected given the production of this show and the way that it did go through some big change ups.
You're talking about like a pacing
production
issue?
It's well, we'll get to that when we talk about story, because I think there is more to say on that. But specifically, I found in episode 7 in particular, there's just a lot of really strange moments where characters are blocked in weird ways of standing really far apart from each other because they were probably shot on very different times, or there's this very specific line of ADR that is thrown in that even in the cut that I watched was like half cut off at the end of the sentence. I don't know if you noticed it, but it was really strange. And it was just one of those things that, again, it didn't happen entirely throughout the entire season, but there were times watching these episodes that you can tell that there was stuff chopped up, and I don't think it flowed as smoothly as it might have intended to in sort of the middle sections of some of these episodes. But again, it's very minor. It's nothing that really ruined watching the show for me. It was just something I noticed about the editing in particular. But let's talk about these characters, these performances. I think we've gotten to see them after season 3 of Daredevil. I mean, we have gotten to see Matt Murdock, not necessarily as Daredevil, but as Matt Murdock, in the MCU officially. We've gotten to see Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk, as Kingpin, back in the MCU officially. But now we're seeing them in this series in in like what could be considered, the official adaptation of their characters. So let's start with Charlie Cox. I think obviously he's excellent as always. I think he's just as charming and intense and as quick as he's always been. And I love seeing this version of Matt Murdock that has matured so well in this character, but also to get him shaken up. And like seeing the way Charlie Cox deals with a character that is trying not to succumb to his darker side. I think we saw that a bit in the Netflix series, of course, but it's kind of amped up to 11, especially after the first episode of this season. What did you guys think of Charlie Cox?
I mean, again, he was a brilliant return to form from that first series, and then building upon it with, like you said, the challenges he's facing in this season, and the way that I find that they mirror almost his challenges with Wilson Fisk's, like they say in that synopsis that you read at the beginning there. They're both, these stories are so like similar, and we're going through them at the same pace and same time. And like when that collision inevitably happens, it's so rewarding. And again, these two actors are just acting their asses off with everything they're giving for these characters, because we're seeing them change so much from what we're used to. Like they're at the end of their ropes for what they're trying to do, and trying to change and come out the other side. And it's such a fascinating story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, they meet early on, and actually both actors have talked about it along this press tour. It's like the first episode that they actually collide, and we see them, and they've, you know, there's been many years between that time since they've seen each other. So this is like a reintroduction to them for each other, and also for us as the viewers to see how this relationship is different. And to the point, after that, it really does seem like they're on opposite ends throughout the rest of this season, and they really do get to play off of that. They get to run parallel with one another. I think Charlie Cox, you know, we've seen glimpses of it throughout the Daredevil Netflix series, where he just is able to deliver raw emotion, and he brings that here. Like you said, Nate, shaken up, a little frazzled, a little altered, if you will. He has bringing such emotional weight to everything that he feels. And then he's also charming as hell. He's absolutely charming. He can balance that out. He's got that riz, as you were saying, right? So he's got a lot of that. And I think that helps with him being able to kind of take what he's already established in the MCU with She-Hulk, with Spider-Man No Way Home, having a little charisma, a little fun, bringing that in as almost a new element, a new sort of trick up his sleeve to kind of enhance Matt Murdock for the MCU, while still delivering really raw moments, emotional moments. Like he's absolutely fantastic. It's like both him and Vincent just kind of slipped into their roles like they were old friends. Like it was crazy.
Well, because they are old friends, right? They're old friends, and the characters are old enemies. And I think, you know, you're right. My initial reactions on Twitter, I did mention how charming he seemed in this show, and I must have just sort of, having not watched season 3 by that point, forgotten about. Yeah, he is completely a ladies' man. And I do want to correct something I mentioned earlier, that he was just Matt Murdock. No, of course he was Daredevil in She-Hulk. But, you know, he's rizzed up Karen, he's rizzed up Claire, he's rizzed up Jennifer Walters. And in this show, we actually get to see him, you know, kind of sharing screen time with another character named Heather, played by Margarita Levieva, who is equally as charming as Charlie Cox, as Matt Murdock, and I'm really intrigued to see how her story plays out. But you know, just coming back to Fisk, you know, Justin, you and I watched, we got to watch a junket that they did, and Vincent D'Onofrio talks about the fact that they up until Daredevil Born Again, they had only shared 6 scenes together over all the years that they had ever been working prior. And it gives them as actors so much when they do then get to act together, because they've had that time apart. And it makes such a huge impact for viewers, for us as well. And we see that in the show. And I love how you pointed that out, that we really do get to see them come together after this very long time of being apart in that first episode. And it just elevates their interactions tenfold.
And it elevates their journey, right? Like what actually makes their interactions so great is the least that they're not often, right? They're not often that they happen. So when they do happen, they're really, really great. So I think that this show recognizes that, understands that this is, you know, you call it Daredevil, but it's really a Matt Murdock show with Wilson Fisk. And, you know, Daredevil's obviously the archetypal titular hero of the show, even with the most recent, you know, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. You know, like it was more of a Peter Parker show than it was a Spider-Man show. It was about Peter Parker. And I feel like this series is very much like, it is a Matt Murdock show. And I don't want to necessarily say that it's not Daredevil, but there is a lot of him trying to deal or negotiate with that, as you mentioned, Nate, darker side. And I think that's what makes it really interesting about the show, and still a success in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we talked about the show maintaining the tone from the Netflix series. Deborah Ann Wool is back as Karen Page.
So great. I love her.
She's fantastic, and I
Yeah.
think it's, for me, the only thing I will say is because she's had so much time with Charlie Cox, much like D'Onofrio, their chemistry is so incredible, and I have to shout out, there's an episode of season 3 on the Netflix series where we get to see her origin, and she acts her, like you said, Darcy, her ass off in that episode, and we get to see her in this series, in this season, getting to some of that same emotional depth.
Mm-hmm.
I wish we got more of her. I will just say that. But for what little we do get of her this season, I was really grateful.
She makes it matter, and I think that's what's really stands out about Deborah Ann Wool's performance, is that when she's on screen, she makes it matter. And to your point, it's not a lot, but at the same time, it's it's just enough to remind us exactly the power of Karen. And I really enjoyed having her back in the show. It was refreshing, and it was great to see them together, as well as another fan favorite, Mr. Frank Castle.
What can we say? What can we say?
What can we
about
say?
Frank? We really can't say much.
We can't say much. I will just say this. I will say that he's
John
exactly
Bernthal's
like you remember.
perfect. Always.
Yes, John Bernthal is incredible. The relationship between Frank Castle and John Bernthal is, it's like they're the same. You know what I mean? This is just it's just Frank Castle is just John Bernthal to an extreme,
sure.
Right? To a
far more animalistic,
extreme.
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
But I just mean the comfort. You could see Michael Borzato in Frank Castle, but it's just elevated to like 110, and it's incredible. Like, it's incredible to see the Punisher in the MCU. I will just suggest to everyone, though, that they temper their expectations about how much he's actually in this show. So it's not like it's a full-fledged like Daredevil and Punisher show. No, that's not the case. That's not. I think that was season 2 of the Daredevil show, where we did get a lot of them together. But this is a great reintroduction to Frank Castle and the Punisher as a whole. I think he kills it. He knew his role. He came in. He did it. He did such a great job.
Oh yeah, again, seeing him just be the Punisher again, and to the lengths they let him go to with the violence and visceral ways he's going through these rooms of enemies. That's where you remember what the Punisher is and what he stands for. And it was really cool to come back to that after so long with it. And like you said, while we're not getting a lot of these characters, I feel like what the season is doing is setting up a much grander story for season 2, which I am so excited to see what comes next for these characters.
Sure. Yeah,
and I love like when he calls him Red. It warms
my
heart.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. I also want to shout out also returning Ayelet Zurer, Vanessa. Oh, Vanessa. She is just as intimidating, I think, as Wilson Fisk, and it's really cool to see her in this sort of different role. Fisk is gone for a very long time, up until the beginning of this series, and it's interesting to sort of see her at odds with Wilson, where she chooses to cooperate, where they choose to work together, and how they sort of have to kind of deal with some of the conflicts that come from his position in the show and her position in the show.
Yeah. And sharing business, running a business together. So
business on both sides.
Yeah.
I want to just quickly mention a couple of newcomers as well. I think Kamar de los Reyes is absolutely fantastic. He's in episode 2. The episode is dedicated to him. He is no longer with us. He passed away in December of 2023 while this show was in production. But I think he gives a really fantastic performance, and he plays this character that gives Matt this very sort of much needed push in a certain way for this season. And I think there's just a monologue that Kamar gives that really, really hits. So I just wanted to shout him out as well.
Yeah, his performance was very heartfelt, and he knew what his character was meant to do for Matt Murdock, and I think he delivered that with that emotion, and it really stands out as being one of the highlights from this season.
And again, I think his performance also highlights the fact that the impact that the people surrounding Matt have on him in his journey as Daredevil or as Matt Murdock. So it was really cool. I think it was really cool seeing it brought to life by Kumar in the show. It was so well done.
While we're on the topic of newcomers, I want to shout out Michael Gandolfini's Daniel.
The Dolph.
Yeah, the Dolph.
Is that what that's I would call him that, and he would never talk to me again. That's what.
Yeah, probably not. I think he's a standout, man. I think he starts super wholesome, morally driven character, passionate about the Fisk campaign. I think he's
a go-getter.
He brings that excitement, and he's just like he's like, that's a great idea, Mr. Fisk. But as the series progresses, you can see that compass, that moral compass, disappearing. You see him; it's sort of being replaced by just an unwavering desire to just be Fisk's right-hand man and just to like serve Fisk, right? So I think that like to see that throughout this season, and to see sort of like this progression of this character and how he has these fantastic character moments, it's really, really great. And I think it's to see Gandolfini's son in a show like this, it's really great.
Yeah, I mean, Fisk always has a muse, right? Like last season it was last season 3 of the Netflix show was it does feel like last season, but was Poindexter. This season it is Daniel Blake, and
in between that he had Echo, right? So
sure, absolutely, right. He always has someone to try
mentor.
And a mentor, award. That's it. Yeah, I was. I
had someone that I could mentor. Yes.
And I feel like I feel like Daniel Blake feels like a character ripped right out of Succession to me. Like he does
self-serving,
very much feel like, but then he kind of he turns into more of, like you were saying, this yes man, and he's blindly following Fisk and doing anything he says, and you can see him going from this sort of somewhat sort of like unassuming kind of character to a very dark person, and I'm very intrigued to see where his character goes.
Yeah, just the last person I want to mention is Benjamin Poindexter, Bullseye. Seeing him back in this, it's been a real treat. I think he was always an interesting character. Like, he was probably the single best part of season 3, in my opinion, just because of his introduction and who he was and how they introduced Bullseye. But he, like, again, another character that probably isn't featured like throughout the entire show, but to know that he exists in this world, he does get a serious amount of attention. And I think that he is obviously one of the many threads from the previous show that is carrying over, but I think he is so crucial as an adversary for Daredevil that I'm happy that they brought him over. I'm happy they found a way to bring him over and keep him intact. And I'm excited to see what happens with this character throughout this show.
Yeah, there's some wild stuff. But we're not going to talk about the wild stuff in detail. Instead, we're going to talk about it and dance around it as we talk about the story and the pacing as we kind of start to round out this review. And I think this is where I want to again, there's really not too much that we can say without getting into spoilers. But I think talking about the pacing, and Justin, you brought it up when I mentioned how the editing felt a little choppy for me. I think the first 10 minutes of episode 1, I felt like the dialogue was like super cheesy, and I was worried about the show. I was like, oh no, tell me this isn't what it is. But then obviously when you get past that 10 minutes, you realize how purposeful that feeling that they made you feel was. And I think after that, the show sort of does this balancing act of being a superhero show to a crime drama, to a courtroom drama, to a superhero show. And I think for the most part, it works. There's an instance where we get an episode involving a bank heist. And at first I'm like, this feels very disconnected. But they do find a way in a very small amounts to make it feel still connected to the overall story. Again, I think there's just moments in the middle of some of these episodes where you can feel those production changes. You can feel the fact that like if you just look at the episodes, if you look at episodes 1, 8, and 9, which are all directed by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, they do feel different. than 2 through 7. So I'm just saying it's something I noticed, that I did feel a bit of that disconnection throughout. But I think Dario Scartapane and his team did an excellent job at weaving together and filling in some of those blanks. I just noticed it a little bit. I still think overall as a story, it works really well and is not confusing and is not as messy as a lot of things that we've watched that have had these big production shakeups have had. But I just felt like it was noticeable for sure, at least for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think for me, it's not necessarily in the middle of episodes. It's in the middle of this season that I feel like the lull. I feel like it kind of like
maybe it's because I was just watching all the episodes in like a matter of a day that it made me feel that it was the middle of the episode. But you're right. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, and I feel like it kind of, there's just a bit of a dip before we get back to the more interesting stuff. I will say though, like. You said it goes from a superhero show to a law show to like a crime drama show. When it was a superhero show, that's where it felt the weirdest for me. And that is the first episode in the first 18 minutes. Amazing stuff. Great fight choreography. Awesome stuff. But that's where it really, like, to your point, I was like, is this what this show's going to be? And obviously it wasn't. It transitioned back. Like we were talked about this when we got the first 2 episodes. And I said, episode 2 hit better for me than episode 1 did, even with the elements that took place through episode 1. But I feel like this show is its strongest when it stays true to what the Netflix series was doing, where it is character focus. It is character driven. And I think that this show, I was saying it before, this is a Matt Murdock show with Wilson Fisk as well, right? Like it is their show, and they are trying their hardest not to be their alter egos. And I think this season is really about focusing on their internal struggles of dealing with that and not giving in to being the Daredevil and being the Kingpin. It's about turning over a new leaf. And, you know, Wilson Fisk wants to be Mayor Fisk, and he doesn't necessarily want to be the Kingpin, but he can't. Like he can't not, right? And the same with Matt Murdock. He wants to be not the Daredevil anymore, but it's just, there's so many things around him that keep pulling him back in. And I think that's where it's really exciting to see these characters really fight those urges and that struggle. And it makes me very excited for what we're going to explore in a season 2 and see how that struggle goes deeper. I think it was really smart for the writers to build that into the show. Their idea of they're urging themselves to not fall back into those character tropes that they know. But yeah, in regards to the pacing, I think it was really like in the middle of the season that kind of felt like a bit of a lull, a little bit slower. There is a reason why I think 2 episodes are pushed together and are releasing on the same day, which are 5 and 6. I'll just say that because I think from a pacing standpoint, they play better together than they would probably if they did a week to week. And I think the length changes, like you said, Nate. Like the first episode was Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. Same with 8 and 9, and those ones are a little bit longer. They're a little bit lengthier as well. But overall, I think the season is enjoyable. I think it's an enjoyable ride, and it definitely has me excited for what's going to come next with a season 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think it's right there in the title of this series, Daredevil Born Again. The whole season is leading up to that point where he's accepting his alter ego, and that journey that we're on is so fulfilling as a whole. But I will agree with you that during that middle there, it dips down a bit. We spend a bit too much time focusing on like a law story or something else, and it's just like, I understand the purpose that we're doing it for. It takes me out of the overall pacing that we're going for. Like this, again, seeing these layers start to crumble as they're trying to hide their identities and how they're starting to bubble through the surface. There, for a bit in the middle there, that almost falls to the backside while we focus on other worldly stories going on. But again, overall, the story and the way they tell it is so engaging because they're mirroring your hero with the villain of the story, and it's just the way they play into each other, just from a storytelling standpoint, is so exciting.
And I think they do a great job, again, as I said, of finding those thematic elements in the work that was already there ahead of them, Justin and Aaron, to then in the episodes that they directed specifically pull those together and sort of and really sort of add to what was already there and sort of clean it up. I just will say though, again, I think when we talk about the look and feel of the show, and we talk about things like the lighting and the cinematography, there is a consistency in that intentionality in episodes 1, 8, and 9 that I am very much looking forward to in a season 2. Right. And I think, again, I think with them at the helm and with this specific team at the helm for all of season 2, I'm even more excited because I will slightly disagree with you, Justin. I actually much preferred episode 1 to episode 2, just in terms of like what I like and what I want to get out of these shows. And that's fine. Yeah. I'm not, neither of one of us is correct. It's just our opinion. But I'm just saying,
exactly. Yeah,
it's to me, it felt more elevated MCU superhero show, which I kind of want to get. But I will say, as those middle episodes went on, and yes, they didn't feel to me as consistent, or as you said, the pacing kind of dips. I still was able to appreciate them because of how they fleshed out the background stories that would inevitably lead into 8 and 9.
And I think the other thing to call out too is just those background stories, like those, like there's not one story that's carried throughout. Like I was under the impression that this Muse character, which we didn't even talk about in characters and performances, but was terrifying, was going to be more prevalent throughout these 9 episodes. And again, like we've said with, Karen and the Frank, they're in it, but they're not in a lot. Temper your expectations, because at the same time, it's the same thing to be said about Muse. And I think we've talked about it a bit when we were mentioning the characters, is that there's a reason, there's a formulaic sort of way as to why those elements are sort of scattered rather than just being a through point. And I think it is to kind of give us different tastes. Like we get an episode with Yusuf Khan, right? And that's just, it's delightful. And it's a great episode. Yeah. It's just great to have him in this world in a way. And I think it proves the point of, as when we were talking with Sana, that, she said, like, it's about mixing these worlds. The comics do it. We can do it here. And it's great to see, that genuine, charming Yusuf Khan in a sort of darker, gritty world and in his episode. It's just refreshing to see, and it allows for them to just kind of play around, and it makes me excited for hopefully what other characters could we see show up, because it was interesting to see Daredevil show up in She-Hulk, and I think everyone was in a tizzy about, they're going to go more comedy with it, but this is obviously a way to say that, well, it doesn't always have to be that way, right? Because each comic is a different sort of genre. Each show is a different type of genre.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to that episode you mentioned, Justin, I never realized I needed a St. Patrick's Day episode of Daredevil. It's very, very awesome. So let's kind of get into our final thoughts, and I'd love to just kind of just get into what episode are you most excited for fans to see, as well as your score on a scale of 1 to 5 bloody red masks. And I'll leave it up to you two to decide who wants to go first.
I'll kick things off then. I was really excited to return to this universe after the lengthy time we've had away from it. And again, the sneak peeks we've had of Charlie Cox and Wilson Fisk in the MCU up to this point had me even more excited. And the show delivers. They return to that gritty, character-driven storytelling that we like from the Netflix series. And then they, again, elevates it to MCU level where we're starting to see some of these other threads in the MCU matter in this story, or potentially see how this story affects other heroes and at large. So that was really cool. Definitely recommend checking it out. As in terms of my favorite episode, again, that bank heist episode was delightful, but I think that first episode really sets the tone. Again, it's a great way to come back to these characters, and then the way that it sets the stakes so early on that you really understand and are engaged with the characters from the get-go, which is why you want to keep watching the series. So I'll be giving this one, due to the pacing issues I found for some, like in the middle of the season, I will be giving this one a 4.5 out of 5 bloody masks.
Perfect. Justin.
Yeah, I'm with you, Darce. I feel like, this show, Daredevil Born Again, is bringing back the brutality, the blood that from the original series. I think it's staying true to its raw, gritty roots while just embracing aspects of the MCU. and keeping those fights very visceral, keeping them very real. There are some overdone visual effect shots, as I was mentioning, but it doesn't necessarily take away from the grounded feel that you feel throughout. I think Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk's struggle to resist their temptations and their alter egos, it just adds depth, while there's these necessary threats or obstacles that remain almost like reminders as to why they are who they are, which is really interesting. And there's some great standout newcomers to the cast. Gandolfini, like we mentioned, he's so charming, and I'm really interested to see what's going to happen next for him. But then we got some originals from like we were mentioning, Deborah Ann Wall, who's coming back. She was fantastic. John Bernthal is so good as the Punisher. I feel like again, it's just like you'll never need to recast that character. But even with those characters, don't expect them for too much. They're in there for just the right amount to make you appreciate them and adore them and want to see more, which I think is a really good thing, right? They didn't overdo it. They knew how to leverage these characters. And most of all, I think what's great about this is the way New York is featured as this character within these episodes, and really what Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk are fighting for, and that is for the city. And you see it now. You understand why those interstitial shots are in there. It all helps to contextualize and add more to the fabric of what is New York City, and New York City within this time frame of where we're at in the MCU. In terms of like my favorite episode, episode 1, outside of the first 18 minutes, which has it's really, really intense. And that's where I'm talking about some of those visual effects and that superhero aesthetic. The payoff is good. So I guess episode 1 really does set the tone, but I'm really interested in episode 9. It's the last episode of the season. I think that one is where you're going to see the most of the brutality, and I'll leave it there when I say that. But I'm going to be giving this series, this Daredevil Born Again season 1, a 4 out of 5 bloody red masks.
Oh, he said bloody masks. Oops.
It's it's okay. There's still time. I mean, technically, a bloody mask, depending on what color it was originally,
would be red.
Be red, right?
Yeah,
that's
a good
how
point.
Oxidization works. I think I'm right there with you, Justin. I'm excited for fans to see the finale. I think it does such a good job of maybe giving a bit more of a balance between the things that I like in an MCU show and the things that you like in the later parts of episode 1, and the some of the other parts of this season. And I think it does so many great get hype moments, and there's just the darker tones of Daredevil, and it just felt very MCU film for me, and I really loved how the episode wraps up. And so it is kind of cheating to be like the finale. I'm so excited for people to see the finale, but I really am, and I'm excited to talk about that finale and all of the episodes in a spoiler-filled discussion once the finale has dropped, so you can look forward to that. As for my overall score for the season, I think this show is absolutely excellent. Minor visual effects gripes and clear production issues aside, I think there was maybe one background storyline that I was like, this felt really just like they had to include it for some reason. It just felt very out of place, but it still informed the character and the characters that are involved in it. So I kind of let it slide, but it just kind of was like, oh, this again. I think, yeah, Justin, this show being about Fisk just as much as it is about Matt succumbing to their dark sides, and sort of trying to become these people that they aren't, is really intriguing, and the way that directly impacts the city of New York and all that stuff. I think this is right up there with Loki season 2 and WandaVision as far as the live action Disney Plus stuff for me. So I'm going to be giving this a 4.5 out of 5 bloody red masks. I think season 2 has the possible chance of being a perfect 5 out of 5. I'm just going to say that right here. But that is it for our spoiler-free thoughts on Daredevil Born Again Season 1. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you like to listen to podcasts, if you haven't already. And if you want to write into the show with your thoughts on this series or any of the shows or movies we cover, well, let me just have Justin acquitted of all charges and then slam his head into a table so he can let you know how you can reach us.
Well, they can reach us on Twitter. Oh, wait, did you say the email?
Oh, I really did slam your head into the table.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did not say the email, no.
No, okay. Well, they can reach us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. Or they can reach out to us on Twitter at geekcentricyt or on Instagram and TikTok at wearegeekcentric.
You feeling okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, bit of blood. You get that patched up. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, we also have a ton of other great episodes covering the latest in movies and TV shows, including our recent This Week in Geek episode with all our Oscar season coverage. We actually have 2 This Week in Geek episodes back to back. Our annual predictions episode. You can see what we thought, who we thought was going to win the awards, as well as our reaction to the 97th Academy Awards. Both of those episodes are up now. Plus, we have our most recent spoiler-free reviews out now for Pixar Animation Studios' original series, Win or Lose, which is finally catching up to the screeners that we got. So I'm so excited. Darcy, tomorrow, as of recording this, we are going to get to see 2 more episodes, which I'm really, really looking forward to. We also have our reviews for Marvel Studios' Captain America: Brave New World, Invincible Season 3, Love Hurts, Mythic Quest Season 4, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and Severance Season 2. We've got some great interviews to check out, like one of our most recent interviews with the Severance cinematographer, director Jessica Lee Gagne. Justin had an incredible and incredibly geeky conversation with her about her directorial debut with episode 7, her favorite camera rigs. They got into the Duffy. He was saying all sorts of different camera rigs, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I respect it. And Justin, you absolutely crushed that interview. It probably is my favorite interview of the year so far. Just going to say it. Just going to say it. At least one that you've done. But my other favorite interviews that we've done, I think we did some other interviews for this very show. We had the chance to chat with the creative minds behind this very series. Like we mentioned, we spoke with Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, who serve as executive producers and directors on Daredevil Born Again, as well as executive producer Sana Amanat and executive producer and showrunner Dario Scartapane. We talked to them about adapting this series from the Netflix series, what they wanted to maintain, what they added, how they did that. And we also discussed with Justin and Aaron what it was like to join the series midway through production. And you can tell just how passionate all these folks are, not just about Marvel in general, but about this specific storyline of Daredevil and this world. So again, season 2 is in excellent hands. You can check out those interviews either here on your podcast service of choice or over on YouTube at youtube.com/geekcentric. We've got so much more to look forward to as we march on this month to cover all things geeky. We've got some cool opportunities coming up with some very talented folks, and we can't wait to share more. Plus, we've got our Toronto Comic-Con coverage coming up, so you can look forward to that. And there's just so much. We've got Andor Season 2, The Last of Us Season 2, and so much more. We've got Star Wars Celebration. It's crazy to think that we're only 3 months in, and it's already such a great time to be Geekcentric. So be sure to follow along, subscribe. Justin, Darcy, thank you so much for joining me for this devilish review. And as we say, Vanessa, I love ya.
Laters.
Peace.